So in this study, what we have done is we have looked at how language varies across races. And for this purpose, we have used social media posts. And there are two major findings from this study. First, white participants use more first person singular pronouns, which are basically use of words like I, me, mine, and certain type of negative emotion words when, with the growing severity of depression. However, this pattern was not observed for Black participants. This suggests that the way depression affects language depend on the individual race. Second, language-based AI models were 3 times less predictive for Black individuals compared to white individuals. This was true even when the models were trained on data exclusively from Black participants. In simpler terms, our research tells us that the words people use on social media to talk about their feelings can give clues about depression, but these clues differ depending on the person's racial background. So first person singular pronouns like I, me, my, often referred to as I talk, are commonly linked with depression. However, surprisingly, we found that the use of first person singular pronoun shows no correlation with depression among Black participants. Now, this has multiple implications because these words are known to reflect self-focused thinking or self-perspective taking, and basically are also used as indicator of depression. So this basically means that probably these markers do not generalize well for other races. So language-based AI models, including chatbots, are of great interest as they can help in timely detection of depression and are much easier to access. But these findings indicate that depression might not be equally easy to capture from written language for all races. The language marker first person singular pronouns is important as it reflects self-focus or self-immersed perspective taking, and these processes have been identified as maintaining factors of depression. Our study questioned these assumptions. More broadly, our results raise concern that certain psychological processes thought to predict or maintain depression may be less relevant or even irrelevant to populations historically excluded from psychological research, and that includes Black individuals. So I would say more studies are needed to better understand variances in language related to depression due to demographic variables, including other races, ethnicities, geographies, and languages. This will also help in improving diagnosis in clinical settings. Moreover, building data sets that capture racial diversity will be crucial for assessing the models and identifying bias that we must address before such models can be integrated in clinical settings. The biggest challenge was to recruit sufficient number of participants across races having enough social media posts. Ideally, we would have preferred to run our test for many more races. In this study, we did it only for Black population and white population. However, lack of data is what hinders this type of research pursuits. Building data sets that accurately capture racial diversity will be crucial for assessing the models and identifying bias that we need to address in these language-based AI models. I would say that first we need to understand what kind of variances exist in the language across races and other demographic variables. We also need to understand if textual language is the right medium to extract depression-related patterns for all races. So one step would be building data set that capture racial diversity and sufficient language samples that we can use to understand differences how people express depression. So both are actually speculation. Our study did not necessarily study why model was not effective even after training on Black population language. And this is more like a discussion component where we were speculating that this is probably because depression did not manifest in language of Black participants. And further, this needs to be evaluated and studied in detail for in future studies, and maybe other language aspects such as spoken language or paralinguistic markers of language should be investigated to understand if those could be more helpful in detecting depression. As of now, we don't know. So there is always a platform effect, and we do consider that sometimes differences are because people choose to speak in certain form on a certain platform. However, here, as you can see, that because both population were from the same platform and were also matched for age and gender, so we do not think that it is only due to the platform effect, the gap in performance. And but of course, this study needs to be replicated or other platforms, including Twitter, or maybe even for clinical conversation between patient and clinician, to see if the findings such as use of first person singular pronoun, does it still hold there or not. Yeah, I mean, there are several study analyzing the change or variance in language on social media platform, even across platform, for example, Facebook versus Twitter, because every platform has a specific goals. For example, on Facebook, people are trying to connect with their friends or making bonds or relationship, whereas on Twitter, the goal is slightly different, right? So people use their words accordingly. And this effect has been observed across gender and age groups also. So there is a platform effect. I think that is something we did not really study. There are prior study which you can actually refer to understand how the language vary from real world daily discourse conversation versus social media, but that is something we did not study in our research. I would say the biggest finding was the difference in the use of first person singular pronouns, because they are also used in clinical settings. And people often track these markers to understand the improvement in depression severity. So if these markers were unrelated to certain population groups, that basically means that the factors that are known to predict depression, even in clinical settings, need to be analyzed across races.